Representative Biviano, a recent Talk Business and Hendrix College poll found that 64% of Arkansans have a favorable view of Governor Beebe. Yet you do warn voters that Chief Osborne will simply be a rubber stamp for the governor's initiatives. It seems that most Arkansans support Governor Beebe's initiatives. How do you respond to that?
I have nothing negative to say about the governor's been popular. He's got some good policies. I said earlier, we worked together on prison reform. We worked on the grocery tax, which I co-sponsored. We worked on transparency in government. We've had some agreements, and we have talked. And he has told me how to vote, as well as a number of Republicans. In fact, he's told us to keep our mouth shut recently. But let me tell you, not any one individual knows anything. Everything. It's the reason we've got this election process. The reason we've got a democratic society here is because you elect the representatives. You, the people in this district, want to make sure you have representatives that are reflective of your beliefs. So not any one individual knows anything. So we should be more agreeable to compromise, which we have. Most of it you see in the newspaper is incorrect. 90% of the bills and legislation that's run down there is agreed upon by Democrats and Republicans, but we do have some differences. We differed on health care. We differed on the budget to a certain degree. We wanted to slow the growth of government a little bit. So there are a few fundamental differences, and honestly, I expect, and the people expect that. We want debate. We want discussion. At the end of the day, we want the right decision made for the citizens here in this state.
Chief Osborne, 30 seconds to respond.
I can work with Republicans. I can work with Democrats. I can work with the governor. I can sit down while we hash out any differences we have on any policies. That's the main thing that you have to be able to do is sit down and discuss these issues. If they're important to you, they should be important to the legislatures. You should sit down and you should hash these out and not just vote no because you're a Republican and the governor's a Democrat.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Biviano, in a March meeting of the White County Republican Women, you said that voter fraud is a threat to the future of Arkansas, and that one of your goals for the next legislative session is to establish a voter ID law requiring voters to present a picture ID to vote. Is there any documented evidence of voter fraud in Arkansas that would have been avoided by requiring a picture ID at the polls?
Well, there's obviously a well-documented case just here recently of a state legislator that committed absentee fraud, and in fact may go to prison along with about 4 or 5 other individuals. And to be honest with you, I don't think that investigation is over with. There are plenty of documented cases across the country and studies that show that there is some voter ID fraud at the polls. The reason I support this is integrity in the process. We need to make sure that people are accountable for their actions, that our citizens are accountable, that our politicians are accountable. And when there's an element of fraud that exists, you can eliminate that. You need to take it out of the equation. And we're required to show IDs in all forms of our life right now. So I don't think it's an undue burden, either legally, financially, if we ask people to have an ID at the time of voting.
Chief Osborne, do you favor a statewide law that would require voters to present a picture ID to vote?
I don't necessarily have a problem with showing the ID. My problem was with, if we have a 70, 80-year-old gentleman or lady who, they don't drive, they don't have a picture ID. They don't have a government issued ID. They have nothing, no kind of picture ID. Now, is it $5? Is it $10? How much is it to go get a photo ID, plus go into the revenue department or wherever it is we're going to pick this up? Who's responsible for that? Who's going to pay for that? Are they going to expect the state to pay for it? Next thing you know, you're going to have a 30-year-old say, I expect the state to pay for my driver's license. I mean, it's like I don't necessarily have the answer to that, but if we're going to require them to show a photo ID, my concern is, are we going to have them pay for it? And the next thing, I read somewhere the other day where the last presidential election, there was like 100 million voters. There was 84 reported cases of voter fraud. I don't know what the rush is on requiring photo ID at this point. I mean, there's more important issues in state government right now than for us to require grandma and grandpa to have a photo ID when they go vote. And I'm just, like I say, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but how do we pay for it? Who's going to pay for it? And when do we start it?
30 seconds, Representative Bibiano.
Yeah, the states that have enacted this law, which is 20 plus 22 states, they're providing IDs, but the studies will show that the people that actually took advantage of going in and get a free ID was very minimal. So the cost was negligible at best. It wasn't really a great cost. So, you know, it's again about the integrity of the election process. We need to look at that. We've had cases here in Arkansas just recently of voter fraud. And if somebody thinks that young legislator from East Arkansas came up with that idea himself, they're sadly mistaken. He was coached, he was mentored. It's been going on for a long time, and it's time to start putting some integrity back into the process.
Chief Osborne, question number 5, we'll start with you. On the same ballot where your name will appear in November, District 46 voters will be asked to decide whether or not to legalize medical marijuana in the state. How will you vote on that issue, and why?
I will vote no. And as a police officer, marijuana is an illegal drug. I can make this one real short for you. And just to answer that question, no, I will not. It's illegal.
Representative Bibiano?
Obviously, I will vote no. You know, I find it interesting, politicians who make these statements in campaigns, but then they go to Little Rock and they fall in line with a political party. Social issue like abortion, for example. I'm sure my opponent will say he's against abortion, but yet 11 abortion bills came up in the last session in a committee, public health committee, that was dominated by 12 Democrats. All 11 bills were voted no by all 12 Democrats every time. Something happens when you get to Little Rock and you get influenced by your political party to vote a particular way. My record will show that I actually voted against my party on occasion. So what my opponent said earlier is absolutely not true. I'm against marijuana. It's shown that it will lead to other problems. More states are trying to legalize it. We've even got states now, 3 today that came out today, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, so they've got it on the ballot for recreational use. We've got to stop it here in Arkansas before it ever takes hold.
Chief Osborne, you may respond to that, and we will give you a little leeway on the 30 seconds since you didn't use your full 2 minutes.
Thank you. And you know, my opponent likes to speak for me in reference to abortions and same-sex marriages and illegal drugs, and he don't know me. He don't know what I stand for. I'm opposed to abortions. I'm opposed to same-sex marriages. I'm opposed to legalizing marijuana. He refers to going to Little Rock and falling in line. I agree. I watched him do it for 2 years. He did exactly what the Republican Party told him to do. Period.
Thank you. Representative Biviano, question number.
Can I respond? A quick response to that? Because
Quick response.
Okay, on the abortion issue, my opponent will learn as a politician, you'll soon understand that everything is documented and everything is recorded in this digital age. So he says he's against abortion. That's a cut and dry answer. Either you are or you aren't. But in the Family Council survey that we filled out as a candidate, his response to legalize abortion was undecided.
Question number 6, Representative Biviano, you recently signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which is associated with the Americans for Tax Reform group. By signing that pledge, you have committed yourself to vote against any and all efforts to raise taxes in any situation. In November of 2011, you told the Daily Citizen that you endorsed the 1% tax increase to fund the bypass route in Searcy. Explain how you can endorse the 1% tax increase in November and then less than a year later sign a pledge to vote against any effort to raise taxes in any situation. Do you no longer support the 1% tax increase for the Searcy bypass?
No, absolutely not. Different times, different economic conditions. I did sign the tax pledge because I'm sending a message. First of all, it's for no new net taxes, okay? It's a difference. I signed it because that we are in a tough economic time right now. We cannot continue to keep going back to the 50% of our citizens that are paying all of the tax bills. Our tax climate in Arkansas is one of the highest in the country. How can you keep going back? I mean, we just can't keep putting this burden on the people. The economics in our state, we've lost 38,000 private sector jobs in the last 5 years. Our unemployment is at a 2-decade high. I mean, we've got some tough economic times that we have to deal with. Let's look at slowing the growth of government. Let's look more at some efficiency areas of government before we go back to the people and say, you need to pay more.
Chief Osborne.
I agree. We need to quit going back to the 50% of the population that's paying the taxes. And your question was about the bypass. That goes before the voters. That's if my stance is, if you're going to increase a tax, let the people vote on it. If they vote to do it, fine, let's support it. If they vote not to do it, it's a mute issue. I'm not for imposing a tax on anyone if they don't have the opportunity to vote for it. I don't have to sign a pledge from a special interest group out of Washington, D.C. to do that. You people know me. You've known me for 30 years. If you can't trust me, don't vote for me.
Representative
Biviano, 30 seconds.
This is another area where, you know, the political rhetoric is just wrong. When they said that, you know, I was opposed to everything the Democratic Party. In fact, this is one area where I went against my party in the last session, and I voted to send to the ballot the diesel tax. Okay? I voted for the Main Street Internet Sales Enforcement tax. So I've got a history of stepping outside my party when I know that the decision to do the right things for the citizens is in their best interest. Just don't believe the political rhetoric.
Chief Osborne, question number 7. Oil and gas companies have been a common sight in District 46 for several years. Natural gas drilling in the state, specifically the process of hydraulic fracturing or fracking, has been blamed for a swarm of Arkansas earthquakes in recent years. Natural gas drilling and the waste that it produces has been blamed also for other environmental concerns, including more than 100 fish that died in a 20-mile stretch of the Arkansas River and 5,000 dead red-winged blackbirds in Beebe. Do you have concerns about the natural gas drilling in this area, or are these environmental and health-related concerns overstated?
I think both. Yes, I have concerns. I've heard the same news reports that everyone in here tonight has, that the fracking has caused the little tremors in Guy and Clinton and around that part of the state. We'll see and when I say we'll see, studies have been done. There was a time that they asked that the fracking stop to see what would happen. Once that happened, the tremors did subside somewhat, but they didn't completely stop. I have some concerns about that. As far as the blackbirds,